In this democracy, I as a citizen reserve the right to stand up for what I believe in. In this democracy, I as a citizen am not accountable to the government. In this democracy, the government is accountable to us, the people. In this democracy, the government is elected by us, the people, to represent us, the people, in our best interests on a national and international scale. And if they are not doing so, in this democracy, I as a citizen reserve the right to rise up. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I swear, as a citizen of this country, to stand up for what I believe in. I swear, as a citizen of this country, to not just sit around bitching and moaning. I swear, as a citizen of this country, to take action if action be needed. I swear, as a citizen of this country, to realise that the power is with us and no one else. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will not move, I will not change. I will not bend or play their games. I will stand tall with a full frame. I will take pride, I will stake a claim. I will stake a claim. I will stake a claim. I will stake a claim.
All right, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and good night. It's the Fakeologist Show. It is Sunday, February the 1st, 2026. It's just after 14 o'clock here in Toronto. And you know, when we do a show at this time of the day, it's because we probably have a European on because it's late at our normal broadcast time in Europe. So tonight we have a special guest. Great that it was booked by our Discordian member, Diana. She did a great job booking some special guests that we normally don't get a hold of. But she did a great job. And tonight's special guest is Mark Devlin, who is a UK-based club and radio DJ, a music journalist and author. As a DJ, he has played gigs in over 40 different countries. In 2010, he underwent what he refers to as a conscious awakening, bringing a new awareness of what's really going on in this world. His special area of interest was how this ties into the mainstream music industry and the way in which A-list artists have been used to manipulate and mind control the masses in line with a much larger agenda. He now presents public talks on these subjects, as well as appearing on radio and producing 2 regular podcast series called Good Vibrations and Radio Interviews Show. During COVID-19 lockdown, Mark made a YouTube video voicing his anger about the loss of freedom and the mental effects of the lockdown on people that went viral. And I think Mark organized lockdown protests, or at least attended them, in England. Does that sound right, Mark Devlin?
Sounds about right, Tim. Yeah, feels like a lifetime ago now, all that nonsense. But I spoke at a whole bunch of COVID protests in London and around England and sent out leaflets and stuff and just tried to get people organized and galvanized into doing something about all our rights and freedoms being taken away. And that video went viral, took me by surprise, wasn't really expecting it. Just locked myself in my car one day and vented, ranted, put it out there, and it really struck a chord with a lot of people. And many people discovered my work off the back of that video.
Fantastic. And we also have riding shotgun today. He might do most of the talking. Is Esoterick
Rick
from Rick from Port Macquarie, Australia, and he's a top Discordian audio chatter on the Fakeologist network. He's been around the show for 8 years, and I think this is one of his first appearances on the main FAK show. Is that right, Rick?
Yes. I'll probably have done, but I don't often come on here. But it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. That's got something to do with it.
Yeah, the time zones are difficult. So
why did meeting of nations? This and
it's the meeting of the.
It's really
go ahead.
Meeting the nations. Yeah,
it's the Commonwealth edition.
We have 3 of the Five Eyes nations here.
Right.
And I'm a New Zealander as well, so therefore I think we got everyone.
There you go.
Everyone. So they're fantastic. Mark, pleasure to speak to you. Again, I've been listening, chatting to you on Facebook and things like that over the last more than probably 11, 12 years. A big fan of the shows. So I thought I must come in and talk to you. So
yeah, thanks, mate.
Fantastic.
Good to link with you.
Yeah, I wanted to have Rick here because he's listened to you more than I have. Not because I was avoiding, I just wasn't really aware. And Anna has brought some people to me that I've never talked to or even heard of. So we're trying to create a little cross-pollination between our radio network, the Fakeologist Show, and anyone else that's out there, hoping to maybe get some of your subscribers or some of my subscribers can look at your work and see what you're all about. But
yeah, big shout out to Anna.
Yeah, Anna's fantastic. She's a volunteer show booker, and any audience member of my show can do the same. And I'll talk to just about anyone as long as they have sort of a fakeologist type bent to them, where we just don't believe the official stories of anything we're told, and we like to blow holes in them. That doesn't mean we know what's happening, but we just know what we are sure is not happening.
Sounds about right.
Now, how long have you, because Rick has been doing this since the 80s. He's been a skeptic for a long time. So how long have you been a skeptic of the official
Nowhere
story?
near that long. I'm getting on for 20 years now, best part of 20 years.
Was there one thing that shocked you or jolted you into looking at the other side?
Not really. It was a gradual process. I was a slow learner. I should have come to these conclusions long before I did. There were some suspicions in childhood that things weren't quite right in the world with me. So I was always very suspicious of the fact that we had a royal family in Britain. That never made any sense to me. I could never understand from the earliest age why one family in particular got all this wealth and all this privilege over and above all others. So there were a few signs early on that I was going to turn out the way I did, but it took me long enough. Basically, I spent the 90s and the early noughties having too much fun. That's what it was. I was out there as a DJ. I was doing clubs, doing radio shows, just loving the parties and the traveling around. And I came to Australia 6 times and DJ'd out there. And I was just enjoying life too much. And I think when life is too comfortable for you, you don't have any reason to start questioning and you don't realize anything's wrong with the world. But it got to about 2007, 2008. And I started to realize that a lot of things were wrong with the world. And I wanted some answers as to why that was. And it just set me on a period of questioning and querying everything. And one thing led to another. And here we are.
Rick, go ahead if you want to. We can go back and forth.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, sorry. That's what I said. It's really hard, and that's where you can't have caller-ins and everything. It's very hard to get flow. But Mark, whereabouts were you playing in Australia? Did you play Happy Valley or any of those big festivals we had over there? They were some huge festivals back in the early 2000s, late 90s.
No, well, actually, I used to be a hip hop and R&B DJ, black music. So I came out there to play clubs dealing with rap, hip hop, reggae, that sort of stuff. So I played some clubs in Sydney, Melbourne. I played a huge club in Melbourne called Next Blue. That was the first one I did in 2003, and did some gigs in Brisbane. Just kept coming back to Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, basically, over and over.
I caught up with Louis Osborne, who was DJing in about 2002 in Sydney. Ozzy's son from the first marriage, Louis Osborne. And he was fascinating. No one knew who I knew who he was, so I went and talked. I talked for a couple of hours. Fascinating guy, and not a bad DJ either. Not a bad DJ.
Oh, cool.
So, Mark,
Yeah, I mean, I play soulful house music now, so I've turned my back on so-called hip hop and R&B because it's nothing of the sort anymore. I mean, that whole genre started to go down the toilet about 30 years ago, to be honest. So I was playing the music when it was kind of in its death throes. And I got to the point where when I started waking up to all this stuff and getting into my music industry research, I didn't want to know about so-called hip hop music anymore and that whole culture. So I just embraced soulful, uplifting house music, feel good, dance music. And that's what I play now.
so is your favorite
That water style? Oh, sorry.
Well, no
water
problem.
style is Water Style is one of the conscious hip hop acts I've heard from you, and she is fantastic.
Who's that?
Water Style?
Style. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I played some of her tunes on my Sound of Freedom show a few years ago.
Sound of Freedom show. That was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, she's really good.
It's familiar to me. Yeah, she's fantastic. And I think she's still around.
I don't know. I've not heard anything from her for many years. So I do this show called The Sound of Freedom, which is conscious music. And I do play a lot of conscious message rap music in that because that's stuff that still makes sense and is good to listen to. But I just don't mess with the mainstream stuff anymore because it's garbage.
Okay, what is the mainstream what is the mainstream music that is dangerous to us? What are they telling us? Who are they working for? What ideas are they trying to put in our heads?
Well, there have been so many agendas through the decades. The social engineers, the controllers of organized society tend to step it up every few years and just push new agendas and find different ways of pushing mass mind control on the people. So what we've got now with a lot of the mainstream music, the current contemporary stuff, is straight satanic. It's toxic. Well, it falls into two camps, really. There's the satanic toxic stuff, and a lot of what passes for hip hop and R&B, so-called, falls into those sort of categories. But you've also got the incredibly insipid, bland stuff, and that's the more innocent stuff, at least on the surface. It's stuff that people that aren't particularly discerning about music tend to listen to. It's what you hear played on the radio in the daytime. Think artists like Ed Sheeran and I don't know, Sam Smith. I mean, he's gone very toxic lately, but just all these singer-songwriters, Lewis Capaldi and James Arthur. I mean, all these people are just so uninspiring to me. The music is just so bland. There's just nothing really there. And I think it's there to satiate people who just want a bit of background stuff on while they're working or going about their business. But then you've got the so-called urban music stuff, which is where a lot of the satanic, toxic agendas are getting pushed. And you see it in the symbolism, you see it in what goes into the videos, you see it in what goes into the stage shows, in the way the stage shows are all laid out and all the decor and the backdrops and stuff. And with only a small amount of research and scrutiny applied to it, it's very clear to see that they're pushing some very dangerous, very harmful stuff aimed straight at the subliminal minds of the watching general public. So that's what they're doing in these current times. But if we go back to previous decades, there's been all kinds of stuff. They've been messing around with the sonics, with the frequencies that go into these records, all on an unseen level. There are various production techniques that have been going into music making, all designed to have a discordant sort of effect on the listener, to put them in a state of unease without them being aware of exactly why it's happening, and never joining the dots to see that it's the music that they're listening to which is causing them to feel this way, maybe putting them into states of anxiety or stress or depression. Nobody ever imagines that music could be doing that. And then there's the pushing of dark occult and satanic symbolism, signs, sigils that get put into music videos and stage shows and things of this nature. There's the pushing of social engineering agendas. So it might be pushing transhumanism. It might be pushing climate change. It might be preparing people for what's coming with COVID and the New World Order Master Plan. There's predictive programming, which is where they get the public ready for a real world event, which is known to be coming. 9/11 was a good example of that. And they put symbolism and imagery relating to the event in things like pop music videos, TV shows, films, stage shows, advertisements, cartoons. They've been doing that one forever. And then you go all the way back to the 60s, which is a period that I've studied at great length, the so-called counterculture scene of the 1960s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that was all about changing the cultural fabric of society and inculcating new attitudes towards everything, towards sex, towards family, towards drugs, the relationship between the different generations in that time, pitting the young people, the youthful population of the time, against the value system that their parents' generation represented. So that's classic social engineering 101. And again, it's something that people never expect to be happening through popular music because they think that when they're listening to a favorite band or going to a concert, going to a club, chilling out to a favorite album at home, they're just relaxing, unwinding, switching off from the stresses of everyday life. It never occurs to people that that is the time when their guard is down the most, and that's when they're most susceptible to mind control and social conditioning. So that's where all the sorcery and the dark magic gets done, all under the guise of so-called entertainment. And unfortunately, it's been going on for a very long time. I would argue since the very start of the modern corporate controlled music industry.
And I put my X feed up here because I think this is probably one of the main central features of the agenda, which I think is an anti-life agenda. What do you think the agenda is? Because I'm going to read a bit of this post after you answer to see if it's similar to what this person is saying. What is the agenda they're pushing? And who are they, by the way? You can throw that in if you want. That could take all day too, but
Well, yeah. It's very difficult to pinpoint exactly who they are. We can know some of the key players that work for some of these major record corporations. I mean, people like Clive Davis, for example, at Arista, who's been around forever. He's a pretty obvious name in the music industry. We can look at some of the funders and some of the backers of the major record labels. The Rockefeller Foundation have been in there, no great surprise there, and some of these other so-called Illuminati families. But in terms of who the real power brokers are, the real string pullers, they're going to keep themselves out of the public spotlight in the shadows. I think what we can see quite clearly is that the music industry and entertainment and popular culture generally are intrinsically linked to other expressions of organized society. So there are direct correlations and overlaps between music and entertainment and the military industrial complex, and expressions of government, the world of politics, the world of big business, mass media, mainstream media, the military, the world of science, the world of academia. All of these different institutions are linked. And when you go far enough up the pyramid of power, you find many of the same names, many of the same families, many of the same groups, secret societies, mystery school fraternities, occult groups have their fingers in all these many pies. And in terms of what the overall agenda is, I think there are many. If we had to summarize and think about what the overarching aim might be, it's basically the debasement of spirituality, the debasement of morality. The agenda is to break down any kind of unity in society and instead to foment chaos, discord, confusion, mistrust, lies, deception. The individuals and the groups that we're talking about, they're dark occultists, they're Satanists in many cases, and this is the sort of stuff they get off on. And so if they can achieve all these things and just have a completely fractured society with large numbers of people cut off from their true nature, and most importantly, just not asking the questions. Just not asking the questions in the first place that the likes of us do on shows like this, just not thinking about any of it, just going along to get along, going to work every day, the daily grind, listening to whatever music comes on the radio, being totally discerning about it, getting home, switching on the TV, soaking up whatever garbage comes out of that thing. That's the kind of human society that the controllers want. They don't want people thinking about things. And so if they can dumb the masses down through many different methods, food, drink, what's in the air, what's in the water supply, radiation, what's coming through the music, what's coming through harmful culture through TV and stuff like that, lies coming from the mainstream media. If they can just completely dumb people down and get them to become unthinking automatons, then they've got an entire human population that is absolutely rife for control and manipulation. That's the way they love it. That's the status quo they always seek to achieve. And unfortunately, they've been doing a really good job of it.
That's for sure.
Go ahead, Rick.
It goes all the way back to Plato's Republic, and particularly about the music and how dangerous a band of young people. He wanted musicians licensed back then. So it's been a long plan, that's for sure, and they've certainly got their way now.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if we're ever going to break free of this state of affairs. Because to be honest with you, I mean, call me naive, but when I started doing this work, so we're just coming up on the 10th anniversary of my first Musical Truth book. That was spring 2016. And that book was based on my first 5 years of full-time research into the true nature of the music industry. And I went back a few years before that, where I'd started looking at all this stuff. But by the time I brought that book out in 2016, I remember thinking, if I and many others keep putting this information out there, shining the spotlight on all this dark stuff that happens and exposing the true nature of the industry, what it's really used for, within a few years, we can break down this entire sick, satanic, toxic system and replace it with something much better, which is going to be uplifting and beneficial and inspirational for all humankind. Yeah, I think I misjudged that one a little bit. Here I am 10 years later, still bashing my head against brick walls, as many other researchers are as well. And I don't really feel we're any further forward. I think, if anything, people have sunken even further into the mind control tricks that have been set for them, because the industry has got more and more satanic. It's more and more blatant, more and more in your face. They're very, very flagrant with it. It's like they're trying to mock people by making it so bloody obvious what's going on. And yet still, most people don't seem to be able to see it.
Or they don't care to see it. So you did 3 books on Musical Truth.
I've just done the 4th. So I did 3 volumes in the Musical Truth series. And then last year I bolted on a 4th because I finished the 3rd book in 2021. And a lot of what's in that book was talking about the convid nonsense.
Right.
And I got to the end of that process and I thought, you know what? The story is still not fully told, because by that point, so many people had become familiar with my work that they'd started emailing in with information. So they're like, oh, look at this album sleeve. Look at the subliminal messaging that's going on here. Or have you looked at this band and who this guy's dad was and how high up in the military he was and stuff like this? All this information just kept flooding in. And I thought, well, if I don't put this information into another book, there's the danger that it's just going to fizzle out and dissipate off into the ether, and nobody will ever get to hear about all this stuff. And I think one of my strong points is being able to pull together information from many disparate sources and make some kind of sense of it, find patterns, find trends, find correlation between these different points. And I thought, well, I kind of see it as a duty to put out another book, because I can't let this information just go nowhere. So I've done a 4th book, and I could probably carry on writing these books for the rest of my natural days, however many I've got left. But I don't really want to be doing that. I don't really want to be bringing out Musical Truth Volume 72, you know?
Yeah, I see.
Probably a few other things I want to do with my life.
Well, as I alluded to, I think it's an anti-life agenda that is coming out of, my guess is it comes out of England, the city of London.
Tavistock, no doubt.
Tavistock, that kind of thing. And I think the agenda is really starting to peak, in the sense that here's a post by a doctor here who's actually a parliamentarian in Canada. She said Canada now has the lowest fertility rate in the world, or one of the lowest. So basically they're anti-life, and they're really succeeding in stopping people from having families. So I just read another stat that 74% of all women between 20 and 29 have no children. So this anti-life agenda is really, really starting to manifest now in 2026.
It's something of these times, I feel,
Yes, it's
because if you
unbelievable.
take it back to the 1960s, like I mentioned, I've done a lot of research into what was going on in the mid to late 1960s as part of that whole counterculture scene. And
Yeah.
it was very different then because you had the promotion of free love that
Yes.
went hand in hand with all the drugs. So LSD was arriving in massive quantities at all these hippie festivals and communes and stuff and all these gatherings. And it's clear to see, there's documentary evidence to prove that most of the drugs in the 60s, LSD and all these other psychedelics, were coming through the CIA supply lines. So they were pushing this stuff. And at the same time as you had all these bands, all these musicians coming out of Laurel Canyon and San Francisco, you had the emergence of characters like Dr. Timothy Leary, consciousness gurus, and guys like Richard Alpert, Ram Dass, as he was known, Terence McKenna, pushing the idea of entheogens or psychedelics, going on these amazing journeys of self-discovery through enhancing your consciousness with plant medicines and such, and laboratory-produced drugs like LSD. And then you had people like Gloria Steinem, the so-called mother of modern feminism, who
Yeah.
was touting the idea that women should be getting out there in the workplace like their male counterparts.
Mhm.
And that was all part of an agenda to get women out of the home from traditional nurturing roles of motherhood into the workplace so that they'd be putting their kids into state-sponsored care at ever earlier ages so they could begin in their state indoctrination.
If
So
they
I
had
thought-
kids, if they had children.
Right. Well, in the 60s, like I say, through the promotion of free love, young people were being encouraged to go out and have sex with whoever you want. There was the arrival of the birth control pill at the same time,
Yes.
coincidentally.
That was the
But,
biggest drug of all in the 60s, I think.
Well, the culture was just so very different then. And you didn't really have the promotion of LGBTQ or homosexual lifestyles back then. In fact, in Britain, up until 1967, it was technically illegal to be
Mhm.
homosexual, which
Same
is
here.
almost unbelievable now.
Yeah.
And look how much culture has
I
changed.
think it's
These days,
compulsory.
it's
Isn't
these
it
days it's
compulsory
virtually
now?
illegal to criticize that, and you'll go to jail for having anything to say about it. So things have definitely changed, and I would say the agenda now is very anti-life, but it wasn't always that way. So for different decades, they seem to have different priorities, and for whatever reason, in the 2020s, that's a big part of things. Massive population reduction.
That's because the earth has a charter as granted by our king. Now, I say our king because he is the king of Canada as well. Most Canadians don't really understand that.
Ain't
They
my
think
king.
it's symbolic, but when our
Sausage fingers.
crime sinister bows down and kisses the ring and it's on YouTube and most people have never seen it, then it's more than symbolic. It's an oath. It's sworn, I think, on a Bible. So it's the real deal. It's not a joke. It's not ceremonial.
Does anyone recognize the value of a king out there anymore?
If they
No.
if they understood the power he has, he's in all the courtrooms in Canada. He's in all the schools. So it's more than a symbol. It is an actual
It's only
entity.
illusory power, though, isn't it? It's just imaginary.
Well, yeah, I agree with you that it's illusory and it's representative of the ruling families. They just pick him to be their buffer. I think there are layers in between.
I think Monty Python nailed it with the scene of the constitutional peasants and
Life of Brian. No, the Holy Grail.
the first one, the Holy Grail,
Holy Grail.
where he goes, how can you tell he's a king because he hasn't got shit all over him? When he's charging through the place. That sums it all up, though.
Yeah,
The ludicrousness of that someone with would hold divine right over a complete myth that they've been, given.
Mhm.
But look at the situation we've got now. Very few people in Britain seem to place any stock in the idea of a royal family. So,
But
Charles.
they'll line up. They'll line up along the streets to see him, though. A lot of them.
Well, yeah, some will. I mean, he's not as popular as the Queen was for
No.
some reason. But if we look at what's been going on over the past few years, so we've had all the revelations about Prince Andrew, right? And his connections with Jeffrey Epstein and his presence on Epstein Island and the controversy with this young woman who claims that he sexually assaulted her when she was underage, Virginia
Who committed
Giuffre, I
suicide.
think her name was. And she just happened to commit suicide the other year,
As they do.
right before
As
she
they
was due
do.
to testify in court against Andrew. So we've got Andrew's known connections to Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, all these people. Then we've got King Charles, his connections to Jimmy Savile, Sir Jimmy Savile, one of the most grotesque and prodigious paedophiles that Britain's ever produced, or that we know about anyway, who worked for the BBC, those nice people, for so many decades. So there's a direct link there. Then just think about the number of sirs and lords that the Queen knighted as part of the British honours system through the decades, and how many of them have been exposed as having been paedophiles. It's just unbelievable. It's like the term sir is synonymous with it. And we're asked to believe that the Queen didn't know about any of these people. You know, she was taken by surprise, and MI6 or whatever hadn't done their research into these people and their backgrounds and stuff. And yet, even faced with all this evidence, so the British public know about this. They know about Savile. It's been all over the mainstream news. They know that he was best friends with Prince Charles, and he used to go and visit Buckingham Palace, and he used to hang out with Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister, and stuff like this. But even in spite of all of that, still the British public are giving the royal family a pass in terms of allowing them to continue. There should be a massive national outcry. People should be demanding that this institution is torn down and made to face justice for what it's been involved with. But they don't. They just accept the whole thing and shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well, what can you do? So there's another reminder of just how far we still have to go in terms of fixing so many of the things that are desperately wrong in human society.
Mark, even if it goes on to mainstream news, it's even if, no matter how crazy, you've the proof that you've got of something, people ignore it. They had Australian 60 Minutes have done two amazing shows that should be front page news, the research into that Dolphin Square thing with all of Thatcher's cabinet and Cyril, what's his name, and the former Prime Minister in the 60s, whatever his name
Ted
was,
Heath.
being pedophiles. Ted Heath, named them, they had the witnesses, nothing happened. People just sat there and watched it, and it went over the top of their heads.
Yeah.
It's just
People just don't want to rock the boat with their cozy, comfortable lives. They'll do anything to have to avoid taking any kind of action. They just want to be left alone in their living rooms. It's a bit like that speech from Peter Finch in the movie Network, if you've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah,
he's like a rogue newsreader that just goes off script and starts ranting on the TV news.
Yeah.
And he's saying, people just want to be left alone. They're like, please just, let us have our TV and our living room and our cozy homes and stuff, and we won't say anything. And that's the way people are. They just want cozy, comfortable lives. Unfortunately, though, it's not a cozy, comfortable world. It can't be when it's run by the individuals and the groups that we have running this one.
So what will
particularly who you've got at the moment? That Starmer, I think he's almost as bad as Tony B. Liar as being nefarious.
It's just unbelievable to me that he's still in office.
Yeah.
How is that even possible? He is literally the most unpopular prime minister in the history of British politics. And when you consider that the competition includes Tony Blair, that is almost unfeasible. People detest Starmer more than they detested Blair, and yet he's still clinging on to office. That is just a woeful state of affairs.
So that must mean there's enough support for his party that they can keep going. So,
well, not really. It's down to the way the last general election was manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of the proportional representation way of allowing political parties to gain office, it means that you can have a situation like we had in 2024, when I think it was less than 25% of the general public had actually voted for Starmer. So fewer than a quarter of the nation actually wanted this guy, and yet he got in. And we're told that's a democracy. When over 75% of the people had no interest in having this guy in office, but he got in anyway, And we're told, no, you don't live in a dictatorship. Oh, no, you get to choose your leaders. That's those horrible, nasty nations overseas. We're much better than that in Britain. So the whole system is just flawed. And at the end of the day, ultimately, they put in whoever they want in. Starmer was their man, and it was his time. And so he got in, and it's always that way.
It is always that way. And whoever the alternative is, the alternative party, it's the same way. Both sides are two wings of the same bird. I think we've said that, just like you probably said that probably for a long time now. So if what system could work that is not the system we have now all around the world?
Right. And Starmer's a sir as well. So I'm sure that's important. Actually, Starmer cropped up in my research for the last book because it turns out that he attended Reigate School just south of London, which now I think is a fee-paying private school now, but back then it was a different status. He was there in the 1970s. And he attended alongside Norman Cook, who is better known
The DJ.
as the superstar DJ Fatboy Slim. He's had many different guises, but he's best known as Fatboy Slim. And Cook has done interviews where he said that he remembers Keir Starmer at school, and they studied cello together, went to music classes together. And Cook says there was a time where it looked as if Starmer was going to go into a career in music, and he, Cook, was going to go into the world of politics. And the roles got reversed. Can you imagine Keir Starmer as a musician?
A DJ.
Or a DJ. What a horrifying thought.
But it just shows you that this is what I think everyone, all of these elite types, it's like they're given the option to be an actor, a singer, or a politician. All these genealogies, you've got your
These
Brad
bloodlines,
Pitt, who could easily, their bloodlines. Brad Pitt could easily be a politician. Easily.
He may still yet be.
Choose to be an actor. And he may well be, yeah. But I mean,
well, this is why I titled my last book, No One's Dad's a Plumber.
Yeah, let's talk
to drive home that very point.
Yeah.
So when I first started researching bands and famous musicians, I would have expected to have found, particularly in the case of like punk musicians and bands in the heavy rock, hard rock sort of genres, to have found fathers who had regular working class jobs. So plenty of plumbers, builders, lorry drivers, construction workers, this kind of thing. But you don't find that. So often when you get into these bands, and it was the work of Dave McGowan, who put out the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, that really turned me on to this whole dynamic and made me pay attention to it. What you find is that the fathers of so many of these people are like diplomats, politicians, statesmen, Lord Mayors, judges, Freemasons,
military.
Military, generals, admirals, lieutenant colonels. So that's a bit of a strange thing, isn't it? Why are the sons and daughters of these sorts of people cropping up as prominent musicians and actors and TV hosts?
Or even Sid Vicious, father's military, Bob Marley, father's military.
Yeah. So many of them.
All these, it's just incredible.
And Sid Vicious is just ridiculous. His parents met when they both served in the British Royal Air Force. Punk rock, baby.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, punk rock, baby. I think that the Sex Pistols are easily the biggest boy band of the 70s or whatever, and they won't admit it, but they were.
Yeah, they were patched together in the same way as One Direction or Take That were.
Literally. Absolutely, literally. And one day, Mark, I was listening to Jonesy's Jukebox, and he had Midge Ure came on, and it was a completely unscripted. Midge Ure offhandedly told him that Malcolm McLaren and the other situationist manager of the Sex Pistols drove all the way to Scotland to visit him, to audition him to be a guitarist, and he had Jones had no idea about it. That he sometimes he thinks that he was actually just there at the right time, but they were being auditioned one after the other.
Yeah, that was Malcolm McLaren that put that band together. And as you say, there were a lot of situationist managers of the groups at the time. So the manager of The Clash, Bernie Rhodes, was also a situationist. So Situationist International was a group of anarchists. It was a highbrow sort of intellectual artistic movement that came out of France. And those ideals were adopted by Malcolm McLaren, and that fashioned the way that he put the Sex Pistols together and his whole vision for that group and the way he wanted to use them to change culture and to make artistic statements. And Bernie Rhodes was doing pretty much the same thing with the Clash. And the two key members of the Clash have direct connections into the military. You've got Joe Strummer. Graham Mellor was his real name, and his father, Ronald Mellor, was a British diplomat, worked for the Foreign Service, politics. And then you got Mick Jones, who is a cousin of Grant Shapps, who was the Defence Secretary in Boris Johnson's cabinet. So direct links to politics there. And then you also had Tony Wilson, who was the manager of Joy Division New Order, Factory Records out of Manchester, who was another situationist. So is that just a coincidence? Or was there an agenda going on at that time to get situationist ideals into many of these sort of punk and new wave bands to change culture?
100%. Well, you saw that concert of the Sex. Look in the audience of the Sex Pistols concert in Manchester in 1976. Everyone that was anyone in the music industry standing around that venue. You know, from Susie Sue, the
Marquis Smith,
Billy Idol, Marquis Smith, they're all standing around watching. There's only about 80 people in the audience, and nearly 80 of them became famous.
Yeah, there's no regular punters in there. Interesting thing about Marquis Smith, by the way, I did discover that his dad was actually a plumber, believe it or not. He's the only one I've found.
Hence,
was his mother in the royal family though, or something or other? No?
I don't know.
No, I'm joking.
Maybe she was
Bears out of the Happy Mondays, yeah, the dancer and maraca player.
Yeah.
His father was a Scotland Yard detective, police detective.
Far out.
You couldn't make it up. Bez is out there like pushing ease by his own admission at many of these early raves. He's a major pusher of ecstasy. And his father is a detective for Scotland Yard whose job it is to crack down on all this kind of stuff. And if that were an isolated situation, people could make all kinds of excuses for it. And they do. They say, oh, well, Bez was just rebelling against his father's value system, same way Jim Morrison was against his dad. But it's not an isolated situation. This is the thing. It's the norm rather than the exception. We just see it everywhere.
Mark, one of the things that woke me up in the early 80s was watching a documentary, which you can still find on YouTube, called Operation Julie. And it's about a police operation to crack down on LSD and the music festivals in the 80s. And what you see is when it's a fly on the wall real documentary, when they try and move on the organisers of the actually suppliers, they're told, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And these cops move in, and obviously it's something to connect as a lord of some form. Every one of those cops was demoted to traffic control and traffic duties for this thing. Check it out if you can find it. I think it's called Codename Julia or Julie. It's about,
I've not seen that one.
Check it out.
It was the same situation in the late 80s going into the 90s when the acid house rave thing got going in England, where you had real drug barons who were basically being sponsored and commissioned to put the drugs out there on a wholesale basis.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you had lower level dealers, chancers, just trying their luck. And they were the ones that would always get busted. So the police would burst into a rave where some of these hustlers were trying to peddle their wares, and they'd end up getting taken off to a police cell. Meanwhile, the real big players and a lot of the big drug pushers in that acid house rave scene came out of the old Tory, toff sort of public school network. They were part of the establishment, and they became many of the promoters of the big raves at that time. So it's like the establishment itself, which claimed to be opposing this youth culture and drugs and acid house and stuff, were actually behind
Pushing it.
giving it a lot of its impetus and getting that scene off the ground.
Yep.
And these were the ones who would never get busted for putting out prodigious amounts of ecstasy. And it's my suspicion it's much more difficult to prove than with the 60s situation, where we can demonstrate that the LSD was all coming from the CIA. It's more difficult to prove that all the ecstasy was coming from British military intelligence, but it's my suspicion that it was. And I go into this in my book, Musical Truth Volume 2. I've got 2 chapters on it. And I've hardly heard anyone ever talk about this before, to be honest. There's a lot of scrutiny applied to the 60s scene now, 60 years on. But I hear very few researchers asking those awkward questions of the acid house rave scene in the UK and asking, could this have been a style?
And they're all still alive, the people behind it. So that's why you're not hearing about it. So it's fine talking
it's
about
in living memory still.
Everyone's dead. Very much living memory. And you're right, it's 100%. I mean, I remember it like anything, just slowly starting to come out, that little smiley face logo. Next thing you know, there was private newspapers coming out, and there was warehouse rave scenes. This is, going back in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. Yeah. And then bang, that just happened. And you had that deep major songs coming on, like that. I forget his name. There was some DJ off his head on ecstasy playing an instrumental track. I think it was 1989, 1990. Great song, but they pushed it on the young, and the young were ready to go. It just was at the perfect time.
Yeah.
And it was
It
massive.
was a reboot of what they'd done in the 60s. They took many of the same aspects of the agenda and just refashioned it and represented it for a new generation. So instead of LSD, this time it was MDMA, ecstasy. Instead of psychedelic rock music, now it was electronic dance music. And instead of all these big hippie festivals and gatherings, it was raves, open air raves, warehouse parties, and then the super clubs, because the whole acid house thing paved the way for all these big clubs like Ministry of Sound and Cream and Gatecrasher. And then that whole culture got exported from Britain around the rest of the world. So you found Australia a few years later was embracing the scene in the same way that England had. Took a bit longer to take hold in America because it was more fragmented there, but it certainly got pushed out all over Europe and then all around the world. So it's literally worldwide now. I would suggest it all had its roots in those early days in England. And I would also suggest that it's no coincidence that England is the home of the Tavistock research of the Tavistock Institute of Human Affairs. And this is where so many of these military grade psychological operations get cooked up. So it's my suspicion that that's what that whole scene represented. Like I say, it's more difficult to prove because we don't have the kind of documentary evidence that we do with those earlier scenes, but quite the coincidence otherwise.
Mark, can we talk about censorship in the UK and what's happening there now? Is this a real thing, or is this all just propaganda? Are people being busted for their views and on Facebook and all that? Is this a true thing?
It was really bad when Starmer's government first got into office in 2024. And very soon after his Labour party took office, we had a really unfortunate event in England, the so-called Southport riots, which were in the wake of a stabbing in a school in Southport, Merseyside, involving young kids. I think it was a Taylor Swift tribute concert or something, if memory serves. And this resulted in a lot of people taking to the streets and claiming that the work was connected to criminal gangs from different ethnic minorities. So this paved the way for a lot of racial sort of unrest in this nation. And this has been the dominant political narrative for the last couple of years, where it seems as if different ethnic groups in the country are being pitched against each other systematically to stir up hatred and mistrust. And it feels as if it's being done deliberately to try and provoke a reaction from Indigenous English people by way of a backlash against immigrants, immigration culture. So this would appear to be a political agenda. It can be shown to be so. And that has been what's been dominating so many of the headlines since Starmer got into office. So people that have been commenting on this have been finding themselves getting put in jail, literally for making a Twitter, X, or a Facebook post.
What is the charge? What's the charge? What are they going in for?
I don't know exactly the way they're framing it. It would be like trying to stir up racial hatred, something like this, or trying to stir up political unrest. So in those early days, in the wake of the Southport event in 2024, there were many stories of people getting jailed for airing their views online. And it was, law-abiding people, regular folk, granddads, old guys, family men who'd never been in any trouble with the so-called law before, and they were just finding themselves thrown in jail for expressing their views. And this caused a lot of other people to self-censor because they were like, well, I don't want to end up in jail, so I better watch what I say. And so a lot of people have been biting their tongues, I think, which would be one of the reasons why Starmer's held on to office for as long as he has, because so many people who would otherwise have been very vocal about what it is he's doing to this country have thought twice about airing that online because of the examples that have been set by these other people. They've not wanted to end up the same way.
In COVID too. So this experiment done in COVID, we'd have random female supposedly was organising a march against the COVID thing, was getting arrested online, and everyone was seeing it. So they just have to target one person, make an example of them, and it creates a massive self-censorship. And this is going on in Australia right now after the Bondi thing with the Palestinian protesters. So it's all happening again. It's happening all over the world at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the blueprint comes out of England, I think. I think they run a good chunk of the world. I don't think Canadians have enough PSYOP military capability to do much of anything. So we get our marching orders from England, I would think.
It's the belly of the beast for sure. And unfortunately, they tend to use the so-called Commonwealth nations as testing grounds. And they use you guys as guinea pigs. So
New Zealand particularly.
New Zealand as well, big time, yeah. If they want to roll something out in the rest of the world, they might try it in Canada first, or Australia, or New Zealand. And even in Britain, they'll try it out in Scotland or Wales before they bring it out in England. So they're using people as human lab rats. They just want to monitor and surveil and keep an eye on things and see how people will react to certain conditions, situations. So they roll it out there, keep an eye on things, then they might fine tune it a bit and tweak it here and there, and then they roll it out to everyone else.
Yeah, I agree.
Mark, before we go, one of the greatest, being a conspiracy theorist for many years, I have to say that one of the shows I listened to, that you're interviewing Leonard Cohen's ex-girlfriend,
right?
And what she said about him thinking that he shot John Lennon. Do you remember that interview? That woke me. I went, hang on a minute, that's suspicious, because Leonard Cohen went to that same, he was doing psychiatric experiments in Canada, in Toronto, in the 60s, and he was doing mind control. He was a lab rat, basically, of either voluntary or involuntary. Well, just by coincidence, I remembered that at the same time in New York, Mark Chapman bumped into James Taylor, the singer. This is according to Ed Offerman, who you've also been on as well.
Yeah.
That James Taylor claims that he bumped into Mark David Chapman in a subway, and I guess that both Taylor and Leonard Cohen both sing about Suzanne. The common denominator they've got is Suzanne. The name Suzanne's in their songs. Both of them were in psychiatric centres. Both of them thought that Leonard Cohen was convinced he actually shot John Lennon. That's what he told his girlfriend. So there's a big there. That I think you should try and don't forget about that story. There's something big there.
It just smacks of MK Ultra, doesn't it? So Anne Diamond, who was Leonard Cohen's girlfriend, was part of the MK Ultra experiments that took place in the Allen Memorial at McGill University in Montreal, Canada.
Mhm.
And she says that she was in that institution in the 1960s, and she remembers a young pre-fame Mick Jagger. Sorry, this would be the
Yes.
this would be the 1950s, actually, not the 60s, before Jagger became
That's another
famous.
thing she brought up. Yeah.
Yeah, she said that he was known then as Michael, not Mick, and she clearly remembers that he was in this institution with her. And then, some years later, when she came out of that program under the directorship of Ewan Cameron, one of the most notorious MK Ultra
Oh, yeah.
doctors, she ended up effectively becoming Leonard Cohen's girlfriend. And in the interview that I did with her, she said that Leonard doubled as a spy. So he was a singer, but he was undertaking intel work on behalf of the CIA and Mossad. And he would travel around the world ostensibly as a performer, but actually he was gathering intelligence data and bringing it back to his overlords. And she said he had a knack of turning up in a certain part of the world where a prominent musician was about to get taken out. She said that in 1970, he was in London at the time that Jimi Hendrix died in a flat in Notting Hill, seemingly at the hands of his manager, Michael Jeffrey, who was also a British military intelligence officer, as well as a music industry manager, worked with the likes of the Animals and I think Slade. And then 10 years later, in 1980, she says that Leonard cropped up in New York, right at the time that John Lennon got assassinated outside the Dakota building. And then after that, he flew off to a remote Greek island and hung out there for a few months. That's what she said. So there would appear to be more links than we ever might think between prominent musicians and the music industry generally and assassinations.
But make a great movie, that's for sure.
Now,
Yeah.
Great movie.
Mark, you're appearing at Anarchapulco. I watch Jeff Berwick's videos quite a bit, and I think
Yep.
you're going there. You're going to Mexico.
That's right. Yeah, looking forward to that. I'm going to be there mid-February. I was last there in 2019. So
Mhm.
looking forward to getting back. I'm going to be doing a talk, a workshop, and a DJ set there. So for anyone that's going to be in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, I'm going to be there from the 16th to the 19th of February.
What's your take on that whole Anarchapulco? What do you think of Jeff Berwick and his views? Do you follow them at all?
I don't watch his really long videos where he goes for his walks and talks because I just don't have the time to absorb that amount of information. And I
Yes.
don't have the time to do like 2-hour walk and talks myself.
Yeah.
So in terms of Jeff's whole world and the world of anarchy and crypto and stuff,
Hmm.
I'm kind of on the periphery of that. I don't really get involved in all that stuff. I think where the crossover occurs is I talk about lies, deception, being mistrustful of the authorities, the
Yes.
control system, and that brings in my work on the music industry, and that's where there's a tie-in to the whole mindset behind Anarchapulco. So I think that's why they like having me presenting my information, because it's another strand to what's going on in the world, and people find it interesting to hear about music. I think that's why my work has been so well received, because even if you don't like the messages I'm putting out, most people are going to find it fascinating to hear the stories anyway, because music it's sexy, it's entertaining, it's glamorous. People want to hear about that stuff. People often find politics and current affairs to be quite dusty and boring, but you don't really get that with music. So I think that's a fortunate part of my job, that people really do tend to sit up and take notice, even if they don't agree with the points I'm putting across.
What's your take on AI music, which is starting to really rise up? If
Oh,
you
hate it.
if you wanted to put messages directly into music, you could just have Tavistock write it directly and do
Right.
away with all these characters that they call musicians.
I mean, you've probably got entire tracks now, entire albums that
Mhm.
are getting produced without any human input. It's
Mhm.
just AI
Yeah.
producing the whole thing, writing the songs, deciding where the hook should go, where the melody should go, uh, doing all the artwork, working out how it should be marketed, what demographics to aim for, without any humans sitting around a boardroom table like they used to, plotting
Mhm.
all this stuff out on charts. It's disgraceful how far it's been allowed to go. And it's just so anti-human, anti-creation, anti-nature. It's just so artificial. It's just
Very
horrible.
Orwellian. It's Orwellian. I remember in 1984 it said all music will be created by machines.
That's
So
right.
he's 100% correct.
And there was this insider named Dr. Richard Day. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Yes, David Icke has talked about him a lot. There was a meeting in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1969, where this guy, who was connected to the Rockefeller Foundation, Planned Parenthood, from which Bill Gates comes, his father was one of the founder members, and Dr. Richard Day hosted this meeting where he outlined all the changes that were going to occur within culture in the decades ahead. And he listed TV, film, attitudes towards family, attitudes towards sexuality. And one part of what he talked about was music. And he said, we're going to make music much, much worse. It's going to debase moral values. It's going to pit one generation against the value system of another, cause divisions in society, and just completely degrade and debase and destroy any semblance of morality anymore. And I would say they're right on track with all that, just as Richard Day outlined in that meeting almost 60 years ago.
Yep.
All right.
Totally agree.
Well, that's a good place to end that. We've been going about an hour, and we respect your time, and we really appreciate you coming by. You've got quite a few books. Your latest book is on the screen, or was on the screen, and No One's Dad's a Plumber.
Mark,
Right.
how do we get the books? Do we order them online or through Amazon? What's the best way to get one of your books?
Yeah, I would say for overseas folk, or overseas from me anyway, if you're in America, Canada, Australia, really the easiest way to get the books is on Amazon, because it costs me a lot to send them out. Often they get seized by customs. They take ages to get there.
Really?
Often I get messed with when I try and post books overseas. So if you want to get hold of them in those nations, just get them from Amazon. I know they're not a nice company, but they are efficient at least. If you're in Britain, I can certainly mail copies out to you, and most parts of Europe is not really a problem. But they are all listed on Amazon, and I've got audio versions of them as well on Audible, because I know a lot of people like books in Audible form these days. So you will find them all on Audible there.
And I notice you take Bitcoin. Do you have a take on Bitcoin? Obviously.
I offer to take Bitcoin just because a lot of people like paying that way. I'm not really big into it. It's just a necessity, really. It's not really my thing, crypto, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go up and down, but in general, I think it's a decent exchange of value, and right now it's down, so it's on sale. So if you think it's a good thing, then now's a good time to actually probably get a few, not enough to break the bank, but I take Bitcoin as well at fakeologist.com/donate. So if anyone wants to participate in the value for value model we have here, we have a page here where anyone can help out, and we even take Lightning Coin, which of course is instant, and it's an offshoot or sublayer of Bitcoin, the Lightning Network. So you can scan this QR code, this QR code, or this QR code, any QR code you want. They all come eventually to my wallet. So if you want to help out, you can do that. Mark, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, guys.
And Rick, thank you for your
Fantastic.
great questions.
No, absolutely fantastic. It was a pleasure chatting to Mark, and thanks, Mr. Fakeologist, for inviting me in. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and we welcome you guys to go to Mark Devlin's website, and it'll be listed in the show notes, djmarkdevlin.com. It'll be in our show notes at fakeologist.com as well.
Oh, if I can just mention, Tim,
Yeah, go
if
for it.
anyone happens to be in Miami directly after an Acapulco, I'm doing an event there on the 25th of February
Okay.
at one of the public libraries in Miami Shore.
Oh, interesting.
So that's like a presentation of my Musical Truth 10th anniversary material. Just to mention, if there's any folks in Florida that might be able to get along to Miami, I'm just trying to drum up a bit of interest for that one.
Oh, that's good. Well, today you would have had to bring
Fantastic.
a winter parka. It's just above freezing in Miami today.
Oh, really?
January is
Far
a
out.
very dangerous month to go to Florida.
Damn.
Oh, if only for the weather, but it's super cold here.
I hear it's pretty chilly in Toronto right now.
Very, very cold. This is the longest cold
Mi-
streak we've had.
Minus what? Minus what? What are you now?
Well,
Tim?
in the morning it started in the minus 20s. Right now it's all the way up to -4, so it's a bit of a.
Oh, dear,
I can go sweat outside now, but if I look at, I always dwell on the weather because that's what Canadians do.
Meanwhile, Rick's about to have a Barbie.
Yeah, of course he's going to go to the beach.
Yeah,
It's only eight. It's only 8
I
Celsius
might
in
do, yeah.
Miami right now, so they're not that far off us. Really, you definitely cannot go to the beach today down there. But
No.
yeah, the weather is another.
I know which of our 3 nations I'd prefer to be in right now.
Yeah, and I keep asking, I keep saying, why would anyone want to live apart from the sharks and the spiders and the snakes over here? That's fantastic. Apart from those
Yeah.
3 things, there's no problem.
Well, why would anyone be upset if the world is getting warmer? I don't get that either. I think we could use at least 10 degrees Celsius going up, at least
I think Canada could do with a little bit more than that. A little bit more than that.
Yeah, I that's one thing they'll never sell to me, even if it isn't. It is true, which I don't think it is in any way, but just the idea that we need to stay at this temperature is that's also anti-human.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining in.
All right, cheers.
And all the best,
everyone.
Thank you, Rick. And I'll be back tonight at 8 o'clock. We have another show tonight. FAK 1209, Prophet of Fiction. He'll be back with his extremely
He's a
bizarre views.
Character.
Very
bizarre, but that's fascinating.
It is bizarre.
I'm a keen listener. Yeah, keen to listen to that. Very, very interesting guy.
Yeah. So tune in tonight. All right, guys. All the best. Take care.
Cheers.
And
thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.